Okay friends, one of the first things we have to do to get started on replacing our mirror is to go ahead and get this right out of the way. To do that, I'm going to carefully get underneath this, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab it with my plastic trim tool. Once it pops up, we'll just continue on by getting underneath it, grab onto right here, give it a nice little squeeze, and then draw it off. Always pay attention to your electrical connectors. If you see any funny colors, it's corrosion and it needs to be dealt with. These look great, set them aside. So now it's going to be time to remove some mounting screws. There's going to be one located up here, one down here, and then two down along the bottom. Now that we have all those mounting screws out, let's come right underneath the door handle right here. You're going to be able to find a 10mm headed screw. Go ahead and remove that as well. Now we're just going to go ahead and grab onto the door panel, lift it straight up, and then pull it away from the door. Let's put down our window. If you look up inside here, you can see where there's going to be a little push clip. Go ahead and push on that and then draw this away. Now the next thing we're going to do is remove our 3 mounting nuts that hold our mirror to the door. For the last one, obviously you want to hold the mirror so it doesn't fall down. Now that we have all those off, what you're going to see is right along here you got a little hooky do and then one on the other side. Go ahead and squeeze those in and then pull out your mirror. There it is, friends. Now what we need to do to prepare our mirror for installation is right on the back side here. We're going to remove these nuts. Do the same to all. All right, so now let's get this into the door. Get our wire right through here. Then of course we're going to line up our studs with the holes in the door. Be careful not to scratch up your paint. So now that we got our mirror through there, let's go ahead and start in all 3 of our mounting nuts. And then of course we'll snug them down. Just double check to make sure they're all nice and tight. Now you can either set up your wiring for the light to light up when either you use your directional or even the running lights. We're going to set it up so when you're using the running lights, this is going to be on. Like I said, you can set it up on your own to work as a directional if you needed it to. Get right behind this side panel right here. You're just going to find that there's a couple little pushy doos. Go ahead and pop it off. So the next thing we want to do is access the back of the headlight switch. I'm just going to reach my hand right through here. And then I can feel the wiring harness for it. Right up along the top, there's a little squeeze tab. Go ahead and squeeze on that, and then pull it out here where we can see it. Now, if you're setting this up so it's going to turn on when the running lights turn on, which essentially is if I was to take the switch and put it in the parking light mode, or even the headlight mode, you're going to want to find the orange wire with the little black tracer. Not the black wire with the orange tracer, the orange wire with the black tracer. I marked it so I won't forget. And the next thing we're going to do is grab our mirror wiring. You're going to find in your kit that you have 2 sets of wiring. You're going to have one that's a little shorter than the other. Obviously the driver's side one, we're going to use the shorter wiring for. For the passenger side, we're going to use the longer wiring because of course we have to go from all the way on the other side over to here. Now with that said, when we do this wiring, we're going to go ahead and connect it in, and then we're going to find an area to bring it inside the door panel and then come out through this area right here and then into the actual passenger compartment. We're not obviously going to leave wiring like this. To access the back side of the door panel, I'm just going to go ahead and remove this speaker by removing all 4 of these Phillips head screws. You're going to find that there's little tabs. If you just go ahead and lift up on those, it should pull away. There we are. Grab onto this, give it a little squeeze, pull that off of there. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is plug back in our window switch, put the key in the on position, and then put our driver's side window up. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is come right along this area here and make it so this is separated from the body of the truck. There's going to be a couple little push tabs. There's one up in the corner right up here. Just go ahead and push on it and then give this a nice little twist. You can see it right up there near the screwdriver. There's going to be another one down in the other corner. And then of course on the back side as well. There we are. Now with that separated, let's go ahead and pull back this boot a little bit. There we are. Just pull that right off of there. So now the next thing I have is just a spare piece of wire. You can use a string or whatever you might happen to have as long as it's pliable and flexible. Now taking your wire or string or whatever it is you might happen to have, we're going to reach right inside here and we're going to get to this little plastic area right there. Essentially what I want to do is run this right up and through there till it comes up to where this wiring harness is. So now we're just going to disconnect the wiring from this so we have a nice easier view. So now with the shorter of the 2 wires in our hand, we want to pay attention to this area right here. This is going to be the area that mounts to the mirror, so we'll let this hang down. The other side with the open-ended wires are the wires that are going to be getting run through this whole area and then into the dash. Essentially what I'm going to do with these is just go ahead and line them up, give them a nice twist together, whatever you need to do to make it so they're not going to come apart. So now let's just go ahead and start pulling this in. Just want to get it lined up. There we are. Now that we've got that in, let's go ahead and pull this through. Let's make sure we leave plenty of slack. Now if you were to look behind this, you don't really need to pull it away, but you can see that there's a little hole that reaches into the door. There's my finger. I'm just going to take this wiring and go through that hole. Bring it up and through here. It's important to make sure you don't go through any of these rectangular holes because that's going to be the area where your door panel is going to go on. So don't go through these rectangle holes. We can take this and connect it in. Go ahead and relieve some of this slack here. We don't need all that hanging around. That feels good. Just leave a little bit. It doesn't need to be taut. So now we're going to take the far end of the wiring and we're going to go ahead and put it through here. I like to put it through the corner with the white wiring harness. So if I was to look through right along the very corner there, I can stick it right through. Let's go ahead and pull that. There we are. So now the next thing we want to do is come right inside this area right here, essentially right between the bracket and the lever for the emergency brake. Go ahead and push right through that barrier with a screwdriver or whatever you might happen to have, and then it's going to come out through the hole on the other side where all our wiring is. There we are. And pull that back out of there. Now I've got a little grabber. This works best for me, but you can usually just do this with however you need to. Just go ahead and put this in there. Now we're going to go ahead and plug back in our wiring harness here. Black to black, white to white. It's pretty self-explanatory. Give them a nice tug, make sure they're secure. Go ahead and pull this back into where it belongs. There we are. Before I go all the way into the truck, I'm just going to go ahead and put back on this rubber boot. It's going to be easier this way. Now that I've got the rubber on there, let's go ahead and push this into the truck. There we are. Now that we have the rubber boot on there, let's continue on with the wiring. Obviously under the dash, you want to make sure that when you go ahead and work your e-brake lever, it's not going to get caught on the wiring. So go ahead and put it right behind the little piece that's right there. That's going to help keep it hidden away and safe from any damage. So now that we have our wiring for our driver's side mirror up and inside this area right there, we're going to go ahead and do the same to the passenger side. The only difference would be, of course, on the other side, you have to make sure that you run your wiring from that side all the way over here. So we would just take the wiring, come right through the dash, and then of course we're going to come underneath it, and then we'll use some wire ties to make sure it's completely secured, bring it up and through this hole, and then we'll get ready to wire them in. Alright, so now that I've got both sets of my wires coming out of this area right here, let's grab onto just those blacks. I'm going to give myself plenty of slack, but essentially where I want to come up to is right up there. We're going to use our connector. Unscrew this, come right in between the two areas, crimp this onto the wires, and then pin it right up against here. This is going to be a perfect ground, and it's going to do exactly what we need it to do. Okay, so it comes right up to there. I'm going to give myself a little bit of slack, like I said. Go ahead and cut that. We'll save that wiring for a future job. Go ahead and remove the outer sheathing. Take those two wires, go ahead and twist them together. Take your connector. If you were to look inside, you're going to see where the metal area is that connects onto this area. That's where the wiring needs to go. So go all the way in until your wiring comes up and out through there. You want to make sure that when you put this through, you're going to crimp it down on the actual wiring and not the sheathing. Give that a nice tug, make sure it's secure. That feels great. So now let's remove this screw. We're going to take this, come behind this. Let's grab our pocket screwdriver, just get right in between, try to separate the two. Take a peek up inside there and make sure that it's nice, clean metal. Of course, if it looks like it has rust or debris on there, you're going to want to clean that off. Once you're sure it looks good, go ahead and take your connector, slide it right up and in there, and then we'll start the screw. Snug it up. Make sure it's nice and tight and this can't wobble around. So now that this is on here, I just threw a little bit of electrical tape on there just because that's how I do it. So now it's going to be time to do the positive wires. Once again, we want to make sure that we have plenty of slack, but essentially all we're going to be doing is coming up to approximately the back side of this. So now for these, I'm just going to kind of take off just a little bit at the ends. Let's go ahead and twist those together. Okay, so now it's going to be time to go ahead and splice into our original wiring harness. Looking at this is the wire that we're going to be looking for. Up on top, you have a black with an orange tracer. We don't want that wire. The one right below it is orange with a black tracer. That's the one you want. It's very close to the black with orange, but you want the orange with black. Now to use this connector, what you're going to notice on the inside is that one side is blocked off. So now what we need to do is go ahead and take the wiring that we just cleaned off the outer sheathing and then stick it inside the hole that has the block on the end. The next thing we want to do is go ahead and grab onto that orange wire with the black tracer. We're going to go ahead and put this right inside there. Should want to slide right into its little groove. And now essentially, assuming both wires are in there the way that they need it to go, we're just going to go ahead and slide so we have plenty of slack away from the back side of the switch. Make sure it's in there, and then we're going to squeeze this down. When you squeeze this, you want to make sure that you squeeze it all the way down so it's completely clipped in. Essentially what that's going to do is it's going to push in that little gray tab. If it doesn't look like it's all the way down, just go ahead and grab some pliers and help it along. There we are. And then of course we'll just use a little bit of electrical tape to just make sure that it's all completely secured together. So now that we have that nice and secure and fully wrapped, let's go ahead and plug this back into the switch right here and then we'll give it a test. Got a nice little click, give it a tug. Nice. Let's go ahead and get this panel back on there. So now it's going to be time to put our door panel back together, and the process for this is going to be the same for the other side of the truck, of course. Go ahead and put this in, listen for a nice click, give it a tug. Line it up with its bolt holes, start in all 4 of your bolts, and then go ahead and snug them up. Let's go ahead and put in the mirror harness here, give it a nice click, and then give it a tug. That feels great. Now before we go too much further, let's go ahead and connect in our window switch and of course the rest of the switches here. And essentially what we're going to want to do is go ahead and put the key in the on position, and we're going to test our mirror to make sure it functions properly. Perfect. Let's make sure it lights up. Awesome. So now it's going to be time to get our door panel on here. Typically it's going to be easiest if you just go ahead and pop this out. Push on those tabs. Lastly, you have all these little hooky doos that come down across your door. They have to line up with all these holes that are on the door itself. So, with all that said, let's go ahead and grab onto those wires, put them through here, bring the door panel up nice and high, making sure that our door lock comes through this area. We'll line up all those tabs. Once they're all lined up, we'll go ahead and slide this down. Couple loving bonks, feel your way around just to ensure that it's completely situated the way it needs to be. That feels perfect. Now let's reconnect this back in. Just take it and slide it down and on, and then press it in. So now we're going to put on the door handle. We've got our bolt, of course. We'll go ahead and line that up and then put it in. Okay, lift this up. Make sure that's nice and tight. You don't want your door handle coming loose. That feels perfect. So now let's go ahead and put in our 2 larger mounting screws. One's going to go right here next to the handle, and the other one's going to go right up top. Now our 2 mounting screws across the bottom. Alright, so we got the driver's side in and it works perfectly. That's amazing. The door panel looks great. It's nice and secured. One last thing before we go. Of course, you're going to want to make sure you do the same to the other side. Get it all back together so it looks nice and pretty. And of course, make sure that all your wiring is completely secured.